We are already into the second week of November, and when I planted up in here way back in May, I never expected that I would still be harvesting tomatoes right through to November. It's been a phenomenal first season with this polytunnel. I have to admit, I have probably waited a little bit too long to clear these tomatoes because I am probably already running out of time to get those winter crops harvested in time next spring to do this all over again. And in this video, I'm going to take you through the whole process of how I'm preparing my polytunnel to grow in all through those winter months, including how I'm going to protect the crops from frost. But the first job is removing these vines. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm quite surprised at just how enormous the polytunnel looks again. The size of it. I'd forgotten it was quite this wide. All of a sudden that centre bed doesn't look so narrow. Last thing that I need to clear away though is this cucamelon plant. This is something that I won't be growing again next year. My sister convinced me to grow this one because she'd done so well germinating them. But I haven't really enjoyed them. They were all right, but to me, it did feel like I was wasting a bit of premium space in the polytunnel growing something that we weren't really interested in, to be fair. This is weird though. Look at the base of it. How it's gone like this. It's like a weird sort of rhizome. Does that mean you can store that and grow them again next year? Well, I did not expect that. I might have to save that and just see if there's something I should be doing with that. There's me saying I don't want to grow it again, but that's made me think, do I? Now, I've been really happy with this paracord that I've used to support all of my plants this year. Probably a little bit thick to wrap things around it because this is 8mm paracord. Probably should have gone for maybe a 4 or a 6mm. This is very, very strong, but it definitely did the job for me. Now all I need to do is remove the archway. That was straightforward. Oh, dodge the loofah. So we're nearly very empty in here. I am going to try my hardest to just leave these loofahs to die back a little bit more on the vine. A couple of them I'm getting a bit worried about whether that's dying back or rotting. So I might, at the end of this video, take this loofah off and have a look at it. I thought the polytunnel was going to look really bare and empty, so I was quite pleasantly surprised to see just how many crops are already growing and starting to mature in here. Makes that transition so much nicer. I have removed the shade netting that we had up here to help the tomatoes early on in summer, and I need to replace that with some fleece to protect the lettuces that will be on this side of the tunnel over winter. But before I do that, there is a really essential part of getting this polytunnel ready for winter that needs to be done. And it's another job that I'm not particularly looking forward to. I think that gives it away, doesn't it? The first job I need to do before I plant anything else in here for winter is to clean this polytunnel. It's such an important thing to do with polytunnels and greenhouses at this time of year. There's dirt on the inside of the polytunnel and some levels of algae, and most certainly on the outside of the polytunnel, algae has now started to form. It's getting a bit of a green tinge. Now in the summer that doesn't matter quite so much because the light levels are really high, But in winter, we need maximum light levels in this polytunnel. So it's a big task and I'm really not looking forward to it. I think I'm going to get very wet and very cold. Another reason why I probably should have emptied the polytunnel a month ago, because it was definitely warmer towards the middle of October than it is right now. Because the polytunnel is currently registering 9 degrees. This brush that I have does actually fit on a hose pipe, but I'm not sure that it fits on our type of hose pipe because we've got one of those weird pressurized coiling hose pipes. So I'm just going to dip it into the bucket and clean it as best I can. Now it is telescopic and I don't think I need it quite this long to do inside. So, because I'm worried about hitting the polytunnel with the other end. So I will just shorten it to there. And it's really super soft bristled brush. So I'm hoping that it's not going to do any damage to the polythene. Not quite sure how well the greenness shows up on camera. A lot of this is on the outside, but it is still dirty on the inside. You can see there's some Cape gooseberry foliage stuck to the polytunnel there. And if I come outside, just as I get in that kind of light there, you can see that green tone all the way down the side of the polytunnel and those dirty green streaks as well. Now, whilst it's not as dirty on the inside, I thought that I would start off in here. I might actually need a sponge. I think I'm going to shorten it as low as it goes. All I have put in here is a little bit of washing up liquid. Definitely some dirt here that seems like it's getting cleaner just by rubbing across it gently. Now all that remains to do is give it a bit of a rinse off, and this is going to be quite noisy because of how tight the polythene is. You see these bits by the door here that do seem to have a lot of water in still, because obviously I didn't fold it very well when we did it. It's quite easy to just tip quite a bit of that out. I'm not sure how well that shows up on camera, but I do think that that side of the tunnel now looks far more transparent than this side of the tunnel that I've yet to do. But to make that more visible on camera, what I think I might actually do is clean the outside of this side of the polytunnel before I clean the inside of the other half, so you can get a really good comparison from both sides of the tunnel and work out whether you think this is a job worth doing too. Now obviously cleaning the outside of the tunnel presents different problems, especially when you're as short as I am. So I am going to stand on this little step stool, but I don't need it as high as that, I don't think. Oh, I don't need it as low as that either. Oh, it's not level actually. I need it up a bit more this side. Oh, right. I've undone it as far as it goes as well. And one of the reasons that I don't have it attached to the hose is also because I'm worried about the amount of water runoff, because runoff from the polytunnel does most definitely cause puddles to form in areas of the plot. Wow, look at that difference. You know, I'm standing in the middle of the polytunnel. If you look behind me, you can see that you can actually see outside the polytunnel. And if I just move the camera up, you can see these beds here. But if I go this way, where I know the carrot boxes are out there, and yes, you can see them to some degree, you can't see them anywhere near as well as you can see through this side of the polytunnel, can you? That has made a massive difference. I'm going to carry on, do the other half of the polytunnel now, and while I do that, I'll give you a little snippet of one of the deliveries we've had on the farm this week, something that also comes under winter prep for us. Hope you enjoyed that little snippet of farming life there. You've come back to very cold and very wet me, and I have to say, a very idiotic me, because I'd almost finished when I actually noticed that there's some switches on this telescopic brush for off, on and low. So the reason I wasn't using this was because I was worried about the amount of water that would be coming out of it, assuming that it'd be on all of the time, when actually there was an on-off switch. So on the outside, I probably don't particularly need the bucket, but I would still prefer to use it on the inside because I felt like I had a little bit more control about how much water was dropping on the crops that were already in here. Obviously, if you've got an empty polytunnel, then that's no big deal, is it? As you can see, I've now put the fleece up on this side of the polytunnel. Now last year, I also put these road pins in the front of the bed and allowed this to drape over them with some more canes running across them. And it did work, but I found it quite awkward to get amongst the plants when I needed to harvest or weed or whatever. So what I'm hoping to do this year is just to have it pegged up at the back, obviously when it's not in use. And then just to be able to drape this down like this, and then I can just drape it down over the plants that are in here, and it can rest gently against them. And I hope that that will make it then a lot easier for me to access into the beds as well. That's the plan anyway. Obviously, if that doesn't work out, then it's no big deal for me to add some more road pins and canes to the front of the bed at a later date. But I didn't want to do it today anyway because it will make planting into here significantly less hassle. And even if I had planned on doing that today, I wouldn't have done it before planting up, because that physical barrier while planting up would have made it that bit more tricky. I am going to have some fleece on this centre bed as well. So what I will do is just knock these road pins in first. Obviously cleaning the polytunnel is leading to this bit, and that is getting it planted up for winter. I don't know what you're planning on growing over winter, or even if you're planning on growing anything at all. But in these trays, I have some winter density lettuce, mustards, spring cabbages, purple sprouting broccoli, some cauliflower, more lettuces. There's a few more violas to go around this centre bed now that the marigolds are out. Few spare mustards, and this tray of onions here does have my spring onions, which I'm going to try amongst all of the lettuces. But looking at all of these that I have yet to plant, I think there's still a lot of work yet to do. Now I'm going to start in this bed by planting some more of these lettuces amongst the other ones. fairly healthy, but they do certainly look ready to be going outside now. And what I'm also going to do is put a little bit of fish blood and bone, the pelleted version, in every little hole. I don't want to mix too much fish blood and bone in because I'm trying not to make it smell too much in here to any predatory wildlife. So just a little bit. Oh, that's the first one's done. Now what I think I'll do in this area is plant a couple of the spring cabbages. Now the reason I'm not adding any more soil to this area is because the beds are actually already quite full. So hopefully, oh gosh, look at the roots on that. So hopefully, if these beds have dropped any ready for next summer, when the summer crops need to go in, then I will add some more soil on top then. But for now, I don't want the beds over full. Also because if I have major issues with slugs, then I do have some straw that I could put on top of these beds. And if I've put compost on here as well, I'm really going to struggle to fit that straw in. And then I need to just start placing out these brassicas to see how many I can actually fit in. So I have a couple of spring cabbage here. And then I'll have a couple of cauliflowers in here. Because, you know, I like a bit of symmetry. Go back to the spring cabbage. Put those there. And then on the bed down this side, I'm mainly just going to pack it full of the purple sprouting broccoli. If it gets really, really cold, I do have more fleece that I can just drape over these, but obviously these are much taller plants, so I don't really want to be restricted by the size of the canes here. Just checking them all for slugs before I put them down. And now that I've removed the marigolds from here, I think I will plant most of the rest of the mustards in this area. Now this idea should leave me with plenty of spares in case those slugs do go on a bit of a rampage throughout the polytunnel. I'll probably pot on the things that I've got left into bigger pots just so they can continue to grow in case they are needed. I better get them planted. Now this is the last area to plant up, and I'm just going to fill it with some more of these lettuces. Just pop them in loosely. Oh, making a mess. In this last section of the beds, I think I'm going to try and get some of these 2 rows here of my spring onions. And all I need to do for these is just put my finger in the bottom, hopefully, pop them out. Not that many roots on them because they are very, very, very young. Make a little hole with my dibber and pop them in. These ones are the long white ishikuras. Not bad roots coming on them. And then I have another 2 rows here of the purple lilia. Dodge the loofah again. I'm so happy seeing this planted up. It looks absolutely amazing and I just couldn't be more thrilled with how it's worked out. But I haven't quite finished because I just need to set these up ready for putting the fleeces over them. And I thought that I would do that last, just so that it made planting up a little bit easier. A few cable ties just to hold these 2 pieces together. Not quite as important in the centre of the polytunnel because obviously I do it on the edges because I don't want them to fall off and then go through the plastic. Also have a few of these balls to put on the ends. This will just stop me catching myself on them and it catching on the fleece that I put on. And the idea now is that I do have this piece of fleece which was very nicely folded but I couldn't seem to find the end. And if we have any frost forecast, I can just take it over these plants now. And it's as simple as that. I will leave this in place sort of at one end of the bed if and when we get into that real heavy frosty season, but it's quite easy just to drape this one on and off. And that's how I am choosing to winterize my polytunnel this year. How do you protect your crops in winter? Now, it might have gone to 7 degrees in here at the moment, but it is not frosty, so they do not need to be covered at the moment. Just roll it up loosely and I'll pop it on the shelf. Now I do have some more spring onions, so what I think I'm just going to do is plonk them between the lettuces on this side of the bed, just kind of randomly. I think that will finish off the polytunnel planting for winter. I'll carry on and get these planted and I'll catch you in the next video. Look after yourselves. Bye.